So welcome back. I hope you got some ice cream and some popcorn. Several people asked me if my 3-year-old designed today's menu. He did not, but he probably would enjoy this. It is my pleasure to introduce Costa Samaras, the director of the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation, to the stage. In addition to his role with the Scott Institute, Costa is a professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and affiliated faculty in the Energy Science, Technology, and Policy program here at Carnegie Mellon. A very important program for master's students, many of you in the room. And if any of you saw the fence painted yesterday, that was the EST&P students, Energy Science, Technology, and Policy students, painted for CMU Energy Week. Very exciting. Costa's research focuses on the pathways to clean, climate-safe, equitable, and secure energy and infrastructure systems. And Costa, it is my pleasure to invite you to the stage.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to the Scott Institute staff, the staff in the Cohen Center and all across Carnegie Mellon for putting on this really wonderful event. And thank you for being here at the end of the day. I know that this last session is between us and the reception, but I want to promise you a very exciting conversation that we're going to have just shortly after a couple slides from me. And so what I wanted to do at the end of this second day of Energy Week is to reflect a little bit with you all on what we've heard here over the last couple of days. So, I think it's pretty clear to us that the choices that we make in AI are going to determine our futures, our climate futures, our energy futures, the futures of our communities, the futures of our national security, our innovation, our jobs, and opportunities here in the region and around the country. And so I put this slide up here because this is our current greenhouse gas emissions trajectory as of the beginning of this year. And what it shows is great progress. It shows that we're about 17% below 2005 levels, and that we're on our way to 30 to 60% below 2005 levels in 15 or so years. And while that's not enough, you have to get all the way to net zero. This is bigger climate progress than we thought was possible maybe a decade ago. And so there's a lot of good news stories in how we advance technology that improves people's lives, lowers the cost of energy, and also removes pollution in our communities and carbon pollution from the atmosphere. So as we think about what we're trying to do next, we have to continue this trajectory and get us all the way down to zero. And so what we heard today, this morning from the several panels was that their data center energy use is growing. I think that anybody who is in this space is hearing that all the time. And we're very lucky that one of our panelists, Professor Eric Massonet from the morning, he was one of the authors of the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory report that I'm showing here that says electricity from data center demand could rise from about 4% of US electricity today to 6 to 12% in a few years. We're also very lucky that in our engineering and public policy PhD program here at Carnegie Mellon, we have another author of that Berkeley Lab report, Alex Newkirk, as a student here. So Carnegie Mellon is connected to and working with the type of researchers that are thinking about how do we manage our data center energy future. And I will say, just to, because we're all running low on caffeine, that this is not that big of a deal. Right, and I'm potentially being provocative here, is like the data center energy problem is much less of a problem than we think, and it's also much more of a problem than we think. And so let me say what I mean by that. What we've heard also here today is that data center electricity demand is only part of the anticipated electricity load growth. So you think about all the things that we need to electrify to improve our lives, to reduce costs, to reduce pollution. Things like our cars, homes, businesses, factories, parts of agriculture. And most of the projections of AI and energy use and the projections of electrification over the next decade or so show that about half of new electricity load growth is projected to come from electrifying transportation. And another 30% is projected to come from electrifying homes and buildings and factories. And then it's that last 20%. So now I think that the math adds up. I'm way out of coffee here. So I think that gets to 100. So 50% cars, 30% buildings and factories, and then 20% makes the remainder is from data centers, all data centers, the entire internet. And so the reason I say that data center energy use is not that big of a deal is that it's the smallest part of the load growth that's coming over the next 20 years. And the reason why I say it's more of a deal than we're recognizing is that if we don't get the data center energy part right, and making it good for communities, good for the environment, good for innovation, good for business, then we're not going to get the rest of the electrification part right. And that part is equally or even more important. So one thing we also heard this morning from Google is the notion that we're doing a lot of data center energy use to power computations and power the internet. We also think about what are we getting for that, and we have to make sure that we're guiding the solutions that we're getting with our AI energy spend to things that are going to help innovation, help reduce pollution, help communities. And so the notion that we heard this morning is, yes, we have to think about and manage AI for energy, but we also have to think about and manage energy for AI, right? And so those things go back and forth. And here I put a picture of Carnegie Mellon's Automated Science Lab, where we're using AI to do experiments, to find new materials for batteries or new materials for energy use, new opportunities to think about fusion power, like we heard on the panel this morning. And we need to ensure that AI for energy and energy for AI are guiding us towards those common goals. We also heard about the way that new technologies can, and efficiency can enable the type of clean electrification that we need. This is a picture of geothermal energy that we heard about from Google, but we heard about the opportunities for flexibility in the grid, for grid-enhancing technologies, for smart and innovative solutions that enable new load to come on to the grid while keeping cost and pollution low. And really, we heard a lot about investment. In our Investor Day, we heard about the need to build, and we heard about the need to build new clean supply, new transmission, new distribution infrastructure, new architectures and new business models that enable electricity demand growth that is clean and affordable. We also heard, today about the importance of this issue to communities and to localities. And so I put a picture here of Mill 19 here in Pittsburgh, where Carnegie Mellon has part of our offices. And this is an old steel mill, and on the roof of that steel mill is the largest sloped solar panel array in the country. And it shows the kind of opportunities for reimagination, reinvention, and innovation that Pittsburgh is known for. But it also shows the opportunities that the impacts of AI and the impacts of AI and energy will be first experienced by each individual community. And so why total energy use from AI, even if it goes to 8 or 12% of electricity use, that's still a low number. If it's in your community, it's not that low of a number. And so we have to make sure, and I think that I know that we can, that AI and energy grows with communities. And so I think about a lot of the work that happens in the AI field in general. And we heard some of this on the panels both today and yesterday, is the way that AI intersects with society is one of our biggest policy challenges that we have right now. And we at Carnegie Mellon, with our colleagues at the Block Center here at Heinz College, and with our other colleagues across the School of Computer Science, think about these issues all the time. And when we think about ethical AI, what I've heard from this conference and the way that we advance ethical AI is that ethical AI includes energy and climate. And ethical AI includes the opportunity to grow innovation and grow jobs for everybody. It includes the opportunity to grow AI and energy that brings new technology, brings geothermal onto the grid, brings advanced nuclear onto the grid, brings energy efficiency and demand response and grid-enhancing technologies. That is the opportunity with AI, and we have to make sure in harnessing that opportunity that it doesn't raise pollution, doesn't raise people's energy bills, doesn't affect communities in negative ways. And I'm an optimist, and I believe that there's a way forward to maximize the benefits and minimize the risk. But that doesn't happen by itself. It happens with intention and with purpose and with policy and with systems and the type of stuff that we do here at the Scott Institute and at Carnegie Mellon. And so when I think about ethical AI that's climate safe AI, it's the words that we were hearing over this last 2 days, clean, affordable, reliable, and equitable. And this is one of the largest innovation opportunities in our lifetime. And I'm very confident that the work that we've talked about here today and we've heard about and the great students that we've seen some of their research can advance this type of vision. And so I'll leave here and then I'll introduce our speaker. Is that, Carnegie Mellon, we think about the future all the time. We heard a lot of projections of AI and energy use is going to be this much percent, and this is going to happen by 2035 or 2045. We think about these things all the time. The secret behind all that is that the future is uncertain, but the future is not written because we are writing it right now. And so I'll say to the students that are here, this is your time and your opportunity. As we see a lot of lack of integrity or lack of courage around the country and around the world, I have deep faith in the students that are in the room and at Carnegie Mellon and beyond, that they can engineer, they can design, they can finance, and they can innovate the type of future that everybody needs. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. So let me introduce our really exciting speaker, and then he and I are going to have a fireside chat. So we're very glad to have Vibhu Kaushik join us here on stage for our last panel. Vibhu is the head of worldwide energy at Amazon Web Services, AWS. He's a senior leader across energy with more than 2 decades of experience in the energy space. He was senior vice president and global head of energy at Prologis, but he has a more than 16-year experience in the utility business at Southern California Edison and first at Manitoba Hydro. He has a deep experience and passion for energy and improving people's lives across the energy system. We're very excited to welcome him to give us a presentation about the work that he's doing newly at AWS, and then he and I will have a fireside chat. Please welcome to the stage Vibhu Kaushik.
Thank you, Costa, for the generous introduction. I know this is the last presentation and exciting fireside chat, but I also know you all just had ice cream and popcorn. And I looked at AI to see, does it actually enhance happiness? And all the results from 3 different engines came. It does release dopamine and enhance happiness. A popcorn with that crunch sound and ice cream with all the sugar and fat in it gives that signal. So use that for the next hour. Let's engage. Very honored to be here at Carnegie Mellon campus, my first time here at CMU, but very excited already with everything I've heard and all the things that happen on the campus, collaboration between industry, academia, and good to see students here. So what I'm about to do over the next 20 to 25 minutes is share with you how Amazon has partnered with pioneers, and I've also been a pioneer on our sustainability journey and various things we have done towards our carbon-free energy pathway. All right, I did not do the mistake. I pressed the down arrow. So let me start with this story is about innovators and pioneers. And I certainly like to believe the worldwide energy team at Amazon that I lead has led with innovation and been pioneers in this area. We have enabled new carbon-free energy to the scale of, as of January last year, published in our sustainability report for 2023, that's 2 years ago, we had originated over 28 gigawatts of new solar and wind and other renewable energy resources globally in 60 plus countries. A lot of which, having been on the developer side, I know would not have been possible. It's hard to get financing and build those projects unless you have an off-taker, an investor like Amazon, funding them. So 28 gigawatts of renewables, bringing in new carbon-free energy, partnering with renewable energy providers all over the world. We've also led in product development. Our sustainability journey is about providing clean energy, building buildings with less embodied carbon, with low carbon steel, low carbon concrete, across our warehouses, office buildings, grocery shops, of over 5,000 buildings globally, and data centers. And we have done sustainable construction with that, and sustainable computing, innovation in cooling, power distribution systems, and other things in the building. So let's get on this journey and see where we are and how much we have to do a lot for the path ahead. Amazon was the leader in Climate Pledge. We invest in the future, focusing on the long term. And the motto is get further and get there faster. Speed matters in today's business. On September 19, 2019, Amazon started Climate Pledge, where we committed to getting net zero carbon in Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 by 2040. That's 10 years ahead of Paris Climate Agreement. And that really created a snowball effort. A lot of other corporations across the globe, more than 47 countries and 65 industries, have joined the Climate Pledge since then, over 500 companies. I know Prologis signed on Climate Pledge. So Amazon really taking that leadership early enough and creating that snowball effect really helped in having a joint action project to drive this change. It's not just word, money matters. Climate Pledge also created $2 billion of Climate Pledge funds, which invests in powering these climate technologies. So I'll share a couple examples during my presentation, but that really served as a catalyst to start on this journey for innovation, new generation technologies, new grid technologies to power ahead. Here are some numbers and facts from our 2023 Amazon Sustainability Report. The annual sustainability report comes out in June, so I am looking forward to what we will publish this year in a few months in Q2 for our 2024, and all these numbers will be more impressive, but we already achieved 100% renewable energy power. So what that means is globally, energy consumptions across our fulfillment centers, grocery stores, office buildings, data centers is fully offset by the renewable energy we procure or we produce on-site through solar, wind, other renewable energy sources. This was a target we had set for 2030, but Amazon achieved this target during the calendar year 2023, and something we plan to maintain as we are coming into since then in future years. Amazon has been #1 corporate purchaser of renewable energy across the world for many, many years. So I already mentioned the 28 gigawatt portfolio that was published in this sustainability report last year. We also have a goal to be water positive. Water is the other important natural resource that is going to be limited, will be needed a lot more. So getting to water positive, which means replenishing, harvesting, recycling water at all our facilities and having a trajectory to get there by 2030. And we have made quite a bit of progress in terms of where we are today. So with that, let's look into our energy piece of stats across Amazon. So I mentioned 2023, we met the 100% carbon-free energy. That required originating 600 plus renewable energy projects, more than 300 of which are utility-scale renewable energy projects, so hundreds of megawatts each, a lot of solar, a lot of wind. There are several hundred on-site solar projects where we can on our warehouses and other buildings. We've also invested over almost 200 projects in US alone and several offshore wind farms in Europe, being leader and pioneer in offshore wind, enabling that where that natural resource does exist. One of the areas I'm really proud of is the nuclear energy. And this is where the investment from the climate fund comes in. Amazon announced its investment in X Energy, one of the leading small modular reactor SMR company, as well as for nuclear fuel. And we have announced a project in state of Washington with the Utility Energy Northwest, a 300 megawatt SMR project. We have also announced a MOU with Dominion Energy here on the East Coast, and are citing some of our compute facilities close to the Talon Nuclear Energy Center. So nuclear has to be part of the solution, and I'll come back more to this, that the future requires a lot of renewable energy, which we know is going to be intermittent, and we'll need technologies like battery storage to firm it up and move it to the hours of the day where the demand can match the supply. But we also need more baseload generation, and we need that to be carbon-free. So all of these contribute to our carbon-free energy goal on where we are, and we need to do a lot more of this as the society continues to on the path of electrification, whether it's transportation electrification, building electrification, onshore manufacturing, or data centers. So how did we get there? What are some of the key pillars that really enabled us getting to the 100% clean energy? Those 600 plus renewable energy projects, solar and wind, requires tens of billions of dollars of investments. So that's part of it. Those projects can power 8.3 million US homes. If you think about the scale of the renewable energy that has happened. It involves strategies on where we invested. As we grew our customer base and needed compute facilities, data centers, fulfillment centers globally, we realized some parts of the world, the grid is not as clean as the United States. So places like India, places like Poland and Greece, we have invested quite a bit in renewable energy in projects in these countries. India, Amazon Energy India, I think we have announced over 1.5 gigawatts of renewables in India. The only corporate, or the first corporate to be able to do power procurement agreements for renewable energy developers. Really proud of some of these partnerships and being able to remove carbon in grids where it is in high intensity. Let's look into our data center sustainability pieces. So that's all of Amazon's story, what I shared so far. Now, within data centers, there is a lot that can be done. And this slide has a bunch of examples. I'll just hit on a couple that are going on. So one is about using recycled products to replace our carbon-intensive materials that are used in data centers. This goes into the basic design and engineering and how the stuff that goes in the data center. Second is embodied carbon. We have built dozens of data centers last year alone, with low carbon steel and low carbon concrete. And that requires cutting edge research and innovation in partnership with universities. That initiative alone removed 22,000 metric tons of CO2 from the embodied carbon that could have gone into those data centers with carbon and steel. And it is needle moving, so that's 35% reduction if you think about it. So it's not incrementality, 2, 3, or 4%. These things are really needle moving, something we need to do more and more at facilities as we build them, as we own them and operate them. Let's talk about circular economy. Amazon is very out there, supportive of circular economy. So when we think of our racks in our data centers, we now reuse all those racks. And that itself has created an effect. 14.6 million hardware components were diverted from landfills, could have gone to landfills at the end of the life, but they are diverted and reused and reutilized, leading to that sustainability part of how we use our buildings. And then carbon-free energy, of course, plays a big role. I talked about renewables, and I talked about our investment in first-of-a-kind data center building right here in state of Pennsylvania, close to the Taylor Energy Center, utilizing that baseload capacity. So part of it also now comes energy. So it's AI for energy and energy for AI. What can AI do for energy? Studies have shown that use of cloud computing using AWS cloud is 4.1 times more efficient. So 400% times more efficient than doing on-premise data centers. So all the compute infrastructure that we are going to need more going forward, doing it on-site versus doing it on cloud, 400% more efficiency does make a lot of sense. Now, if you further utilize AI in balancing workloads on these compute algorithms or the storage, centralized storage, whether it's frequently accessed storage or glacier storage, these workloads can be further optimized to up to 99% lower emissions when they are run on AWS servers. So there is a lot of technology that's going into it, and that will be needed, that actually makes the business case of moving things to centralized cloud a lot more efficient and a lot more sustainable for the future. Let's talk a little bit about Amazon's leadership in building our own chips from CPUs and GPUs for different use cases to enable efficiency in everything we do and computation density. So Graviton 4 is something that's out there now, way more efficient than Graviton 3. Graviton 3 was 60% more energy efficient than Graviton 2. With each of these, we are seeing a leapfrog jump in energy efficiency and compute density. That's for utilizing EC2, our data center elastic compute services. Talking about machine learning training, AWS Trainium is a high-performance machine learning chip, and that could lead to potential cost savings up to 50% and lower emissions of 25%. So building our own chips, taking leadership there to make it more sustainable. Plus, I also talked about data center components, so things like racking, things like cooling system. Last December at the reInvent Summit in Las Vegas, AWS announced liquid cooling, something we are trying to implement this year now at several of our buildings. That is a leading edge innovation that will lead to more efficient cooling and energy efficiency across our buildings. All of this comes back to net zero commitment by 2040. The path is changing. No doubt the path is changing. We looked at earlier charts on how much more energy will be needed going forward, what the spectrum of the load growth is, and those carbon emissions coming down. But to the point Costa was making, how do we get to these targets of net zero carbon? How do we get to zero and not that 30 to 50% spectrum that we saw over there? So that's going to require continued leadership in enabling more renewable energy sources, gigawatts and gigawatts of that every year. That's going to require firming that up with battery storage. We talked about minerals for battery storage. We talked about innovation in battery chemistries. There is AI for use of batteries and how to best utilize them on charging and discharging, time of the day, long duration battery storage throughout the year to reduce emissions in an optimal way. One thing is for sure, we are going to need a lot of energy, and so the net zero carbon by 2040 is something we need to stay on that curve. It may not be linear and will require a lot of technical and commercial innovation. We remain fully committed to it. So Amazon has made that commitment, and with that, with everything you hear now, with the load growth and with the use of more base load that we need, we stay on that path, realizing it will require a lot of leadership and technical and commercial innovation. Here's an example of partnering with pioneers. So on the left, what you see is our Baldy Mesa facility. You can Google that. It's a utility-scale solar and battery storage farm, hundreds of megawatts in California in Tehachapi. And there's a lot going on here, but what you see here is the Maximo, which uses AI as in partnership with AES, and it makes it installation of solar panels super efficient, cutting down cost and schedule of building a utility scale solar farm by up to 50%. Also makes it more safe in the field to have these projects be built quickly, be connected quickly. What you also see is this particular facility with grid-scale storage for our lithium-ion batteries and grid-scale solar is using AI to optimize the use of batteries for charging and discharging cycles and also for emissions. So that's just an example of how AI is playing into energy while energy is being produced to power AI applications as well. The economic impacts of renewable energy projects are huge. In our sustainability report last year, we published over 39,000 jobs of solar industry and wind energy industry in 2022 alone with the projects that Amazon had signed PPAs on. Solar and wind farms enabled by Amazon have stimulated till date more than $12 billion in estimated economic investment opportunities. So it's not just about energy, it's also building these facilities requires energy, requires water, requires real estate, policy, and then workforce. And all of that creates that engine of economic activity. I'll make a couple points about grid infrastructure and modernization, and an area I'm very passionate about, used to lead that at Southern California Edison. The grid is going to need more transmission, more substation, more distribution. It's going to need better control systems for distribution and transmission. It's going to need better engineering and planning. When I started my career 20 years ago, we used to do peak load-based utility planning. I was a utility planner, and energy was not that exciting back then. It was boring. It is a lot more exciting now. Now we do time series-based planning and engineering with scenario-based. So it's exciting. It requires all that compute things that we now have available that students learn in schools, and we have the infrastructure to be able to run that. So modernizing this grid with automation around our transmission and distribution network, substations, having better control systems, low latency, high-speed communication systems to control rooms, all of that is as much needed as the renewable energy supply side is needed or carbon-free energy nuclear side is needed. Both have to go hand in hand. And we'll talk a bit about how that should be enabled to avoid stranded capital risks. Amazon is fully supportive of modernizing grid, and to the point of ethics in AI, one of the earlier slides, we want to make sure if there is grid enhancements or infrastructure upgrades to fund our facilities, those costs are not being passed to other customers. And so that's an important part of this journey as well. Bringing new renewables into the grid, we have 2.7 terawatt of renewables waiting to be connected to US grid, 2.7 terawatt. The entire US grid is about 1.1 terawatt. So more than twice of that is waiting to be connected to the grid. We can spend an entire day or an evening to talk about interconnection reforms, one of my other favorite topics. But the same thing on the load side. There is gigawatts of load within Pennsylvania. Talking to our partner PPL, they have over 20 gigawatts of load that they expect to come online in the next few years, this decade. So a lot of this load and renewable supply needs to be connected on a very aging grid that was built in 50s, 60s, 70s, bringing back the point of grid modernization, supply, and the enhancements. And all of this requires public advocacy, public policy, innovation that needs to be supported. So we know this is a global challenge, but the one that we are ready to face across the business and by partnering with other pioneers in this space. With that, thank you, and I look forward to the chat.
Thank you so much. That was great. Yeah, let me sit up on that side.
Thanks so much, Vibhu, for that educational talk about AWS's climate and energy activities, and really excited to get get a chance to talk a little bit more with you about the work that you're doing and what you've been thinking about in this important space of energy and AI. But before we get to that, I thought an audience might want to understand what is AWS? What do you all do?
Yeah. Let me ask audience a question. And I like to do it the other way, which is, can we all start by raising our hands up? Like everybody have one hand up in the air. And now, if you have watched Netflix in the last month, you can put your hand down. If you have done online banking in the last month, you can put your hand down. Exactly. So you're all AWS customers. So what does AWS does? I mean, we talked about it. At very fundamental, it's about providing efficient compute, efficient storage, which is 400% more efficient than on-premise data centers running compute loads, and being able to enable that for all customers across various industries.
Okay, so enabling modern life, I got that part. So why after, maybe you tell us about your journey to get to AWS, because you came from the public utility side. So how did you get to AWS?
Yeah, didn't plan this journey, and they say you can't connect the dots forward, you can only connect it backwards, so it just connects for me. I started 20 years ago as a utility planning engineer, when utility planning used to be super boring. Capacity was not an issue, grid had surplus of capacity. Energy used to be the only thing we studied, and used to be big centralized power plant in middle of nowhere, long distance transmission lines, and one-way distribution serving a load. And from there, I feel like I've lived some of the most exciting phases of first sort of integrating some of the first wind generation projects in first decade of this century, 2007, 8, 9, launch of some of the ISO RTO markets, seeing how day-ahead real-time markets can make generation dispatch more efficient, how ISOs expanded, RTOs expanded to pooling contingency reserves and provide efficiencies of resource dispatch to customers. From there to, so Manitoba Hydro really enjoyed dispatch of 70 plus hydro units with 30% surplus capacity on a grid, pretty much carbon free, and then moved to California to apply a lot of that to California ISO and SoCal Edison, and through the career worked on different things, managing our resource planning, our trade floor, running asset management and generation, leading grid modernization, head of grid modernization at SoCal Edison, leading business strategy. And then something happened during the COVID time period. I'm sure it happened to all of us, where you get into that, what do you really want to do moment in the life. And I felt like the energy industry was at the nexus that customers were starting to take more leadership in electrification, and customers needed energy expertise. And there was a lot of frustration between and finger pointing back and forth. It's easy to say, utilities are slow and bureaucratic, and it's hard to move things. But I thought the other big impact I could do is move on the customer side of things and be able to bring the two together in aligning assumptions, aligning investments to produce some efficient outcomes. So that really triggered coming on the customer side with Prologis, and then with the load growth now, excited to be with AWS here.
So you were in the utility industry in the kind of the 20 years of relatively stable or stagnant load growth. And so now that utility industry is experiencing new demands from primarily data centers, but from some of the other demands that we talked about, can you give us some insight? Are they happy about that? I mean, so I would think as utility, it's like finally, like we're back. Like finally, we have a lot of load growth. Why are they worried, and what would you want them to know now that you're a big customer of them?
Yeah, great questions. Load growth was pretty flat. I mean, first 2 decades of this century, load growth was 1 to 2% across most utilities. And now it's average 4% and 4 to 6%. So if you think that's like 3 to 4x, that's an opportunity for utilities to really, excitement of the growth and deliver it for the customers, all the investments that will be needed in the grid, in the wires business, enabling connection of load and renewables. A lot of them are also worried because of how fast this is happening and how divergent the demand is just beyond the first 1 or 2 years. So the issue here is really stranded capital. If you talk to earlier, Lucia is not here, but Google or Amazon or any of the Oracle, other hyperscalers, Microsoft, you will hear the demand is very certain on how much we need for the next 12 to 18 months, and then beyond that, 2, 3, 4 years, it becomes very divergent. Well, utility resource planning was never designed to deliver the demand for next year. Utility resource planning was designed to do 10-year ahead plan. In Manitoba Hydro, we used to do 35-year plans. So the whole mindset was designed to be, you know your demand forecast, and across America, it takes typically 5 to 7 years, some places maybe 3, 4 years minimum, to build new energy projects to connect them to grid. So imagine investing in projects which are going to come online 5 years later, where your demand is so uncertain, but you're short of capacity a year out. And I think that's where this whole thing is colliding, that utility planning and engineering, we almost need to rewire and retool that to release some of the stranded capacity on the grid that we can talk about, to enable short-term, while do the planning in the way customer investments in infrastructure is aligned with utility investments in infrastructure, and both are putting in their fair share along the way, so there is not an issue of stranded capital 5 years later. Load shows up where grid capacity didn't happen, and grid capacity shows up where load is gone away. So I think those are the things that are scaring the utilities, seeing these double-digit growth in little pockets in their territories that they didn't plan for.
So Southern California, Edison, when you were there, they were a huge nationwide leader in efficiency. And so do you see that across the utility industry now as kind of waking up to what you all were doing 15 years ago as an opportunity to hedge some of the load growth with efficiency and the customer side?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a saying that an electron not generated or delivered is the cheapest electron versus generating another one. So energy efficiency should be part of the new supply stack for any resource planning everywhere. And that leads into not just energy efficiency, demand response, flexible load, flexible interconnections. Anything we could do to flatten the nature of load curve on the grid is going to be super efficient. So there is a Department of Energy, US Department of Energy report that across the US, I said 1,100 gigawatt grid roughly, if we can curtail peak load for 1% of the time, that's 87 hours in a year, 1% of the time, that could free up 127 gigawatts of capacity on the grid. If we can curtail for 0.25% of the time, so that's 20 hours in a year, that could free up like 40 gigawatts of capacity. So I think we talk a lot about generation, supply, and how much it is utilized and when it's producing or not, but nobody really talks about transmission wires. How much are they loaded now or later in this evening or tomorrow morning? And there is a lot of built infrastructure out there with capacity that is locked. And so beyond efficiency, I think how engineering and planning is done, how operations is done, are there customers that are okay with curtailing or having battery storage, 4-hour battery storage being used 20 times a year? And that could free up so much capacity on the grid. I think just thinking about this differently and not going back to what I learned 20 years ago, which is designed for loss of load expectations, 1 in 10 years, and you just build for that very peak capacity. So I think utilities are starting to think that way. They definitely need customer partnership. They need customers who are willing to come across for first-of-a-kind projects. They want to invest in these things, and they are also curious on what can work and where and how much that can solve this demand growth. So,
you talked about the partnership with X Energy and Advanced Nuclear, and I was also excited to hear you said you want to make sure that customers aren't saddled with new infrastructure that's required to build out what is essentially the new highway system of this century, the innovation system of understanding the internet. Can you tell me a little bit more about the the partnership with X Energy and the things and the types of technologies that AWS, using its giant buying power, could potentially bring to market?
Yeah, I mean, I take that giant buying power as a compliment. I think 28 gigawatts of renewables, we have definitely made good use of that giant buying power and created 40,000 jobs and other things. I think nuclear, the same thing is needed. We would rather be just consumers and customers and let the utilities do what the utilities do best, which is own, build, grid, supply, and let us take it through energy services agreements. It also is clear now that some of this new capacity, like nuclear and SMR, is not going to happen by itself. So if that first line of thought is not going to lead to a solution not for all customers based on where we need to go, sustainable, secure energy supply, clean, affordable future, we need to invest in SMR. So that's where I think AWS with Climate Fund took the leadership, selected with X Energy, and have done a significant investment there. We have committed for the first couple projects and announced those. So I'm very excited to be in this time working with my team on enabling those investments, pathway for those SMRs, which is going to be a long journey. It's not going to happen next year or year after, but hopefully by end of this decade, we are there or much, much closer and soon to materialize. We're also looking to do that on many other sites. So we need utility partners. We need sites to be able to do that. I think that's where customers' investment in early enough in the process comes in. And I also heard earlier, Carnegie Mellon has on-campus established partnerships which are also enabling SMR reactors.
Absolutely, and we're lucky to have Westinghouse here in our region, and the National Energy Technology Laboratory that works on advanced energy in our backyard. Now, I see a few of the students that are in my class that are in the audience, and when I told them that you were going to be here, the very serious question that they wanted me to ask is, given the current climate of the increased demand for energy because of AI, where does Amazon and AWS stand on its climate commitments? I think you alluded to it here, but I wanted you to expound a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the increased energy demand is going to make our lives better, and it's for electrifying transportation, electrifying buildings. It's going to remove fossil fuels. It may not be net as much increase because it's also displacing fossil fuel-based generation that was used for transportation, still used for transportation, and for building space heating and cooling, and for onshoring of manufacturing and data centers. So AWS and Amazon stand firms on the 2040 sustainability commitment to the net zero carbon commitment for 2040. Everything we do in our carbon-free energy glide path, in internal planning, setting long-term targets, planning for our resources as much as looking at the business ahead, needs of our customers ahead, we use that as our guiding post, something we have to meet by that time. And really the thinking is, where are the in-between tracks and where do we camp? You can think of it as overnight camping at the end of each day to reach that flag post on the right time. So what is changing though is as our understanding for demand continues to evolve with understanding needs of our customers, and commercial innovation, technical innovation is playing out, the path is not going to be linear. And so that's something we need to be ready for and understand if we are ahead or if there is a gap and what solutions are needed to bridge that gap.
Well, that's really great to hear, that you're going to stay on that important path. Now, the other thing that folks, our students in the audience might want to know is they might look at your career, and I think that they would look at your career as something to be excited about and to emulate. And so what advice would you give to those students, or the types of skills and attributes and opportunities to work a meaningful career in energy like you have?
Absolutely. So a couple things. I have a 16-year-old and 12-year-old, and I tell them they use more AI every day than I do, and they run into all this trivia about it. I tell them, when we talk about AI, that AI is not going to take their jobs, but somebody who knows better how to use AI better, that's going to get a better job. So in a way, I'm happy they are learning how to use AI and to do their things better. So I don't think that's a message I need to give to this student population. The other thing I'll say is energy is now an exciting industry. It used to be a boring industry when I came in. I came in because I'm third generation energy, and I was just so emotionally wired into it. But I think now being in energy is super, super exciting. Sustainability is super exciting. Use of everything you're learning in school, in STEM fields, in engineering, and computer science, everything has an application. And the rules need to be rewritten for engineering, planning, long-term planning, grid operations. We need to put more automation. So get on that energy transformation journey, get on that train. And if there are folks who are considering things like nuclear engineering, in this country, we haven't built as many nuclear reactors in past 30, 40 years. A lot was built earlier, and it's been operated since then. But seems like it's going to come back. We are going to build a lot more. So graduating with those kind of disciplines 2, 3, 4 years from now is going to lead to a lot of exciting jobs out there. Applying energy in AI and AI applications in energy, I think as theme of this seminar, I hope that's exciting here on the campus. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I know that our students are working at that intersection of AI and energy every day, and excited about following in your footsteps in a career in energy. So we have one more question, and then we'll turn it back over to Daniel. And I mentioned in my slides that the future is not yet written, and that we deal with uncertainty and projections a lot here at Carnegie Mellon, and we think about the future a lot. But I wanted to get your take on the future. And so sometimes the way that we can shape the future we want is by envisioning it and thinking about what are the signposts that we need to get there, just like your climate commitment. So can you paint us a picture? It's Energy Week 2035. Oh my God, I can't. We're already starting the planning now for Energy Week 2035.
Yeah.
And we have you back. And what does the energy and AI and data center landscape look like in 10 years?
That's super, super exciting. Hopefully we'll all be here. I think 2035, so let's continue the conversation we were having. SMRs are out there. I hope there is a 20-foot container sitting on a parking lot corner somewhere in CMU powering this entire campus, and you're not worried about energy security at all or carbon emissions. And I hope the same for our data centers. Plenty of those small modular reactors out there. The grid will be a lot more modernized. How we use things, how we plan for it. I think the way energy markets work, if any of you are in wholesale markets, energy markets, that's going to be totally different. So I like this analogy of cell phone usage. When cell phones came out, we used to pay by the minute, and you call from US to Canada and you pay by dollars, or call India and you pay your entire wallet. And now it's unlimited. You pay like $50 a month and you call as many. So I think eventually the value of electrons, there'll be plenty of electrons with enough renewables on-site, off-site. And the timing and use of grid from a capacity perspective is going to matter a lot more. So look, the concept of wholesale markets, locational marginal pricing, value of energy, we see that keep on decreasing, coming down, while value of capacity, if you look in PJM, last year cleared 8 times more than the year before. And everybody's worried about capacity, sufficiency, and resource adequacy here in this part of the country for the next 5 years. So we are headed into a time, I think, where we'll have more distributed generation. In West Grid, distributed generation is like 10% of overall generation. I expect it'll be 40 to 50%. We will have exciting things serving our load, highly reliable, carbon-free. We would have solved these problems. We'll be talking about new problems.
Well, thank you so much. Please join me in applauding Vibhu Kaushik. Thank you. Thank you so much.